Welcome, and we'll start off with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And I'm going to share the screen. And before I get into the text, I came across in my own studies something just what I thought was really beautiful, and it was a statement that says, true joy is the joy of wisdom. That when you develop wisdom, you are able to enjoy the world. And of course, wisdom is a general statement. It doesn't really help you. You have to get into things that help you become wise. And of course, one of those things we believe as Jewish people is the Torah and the Tanakh, and those people who have devoted themselves over the centuries to understanding the Torah and the Tanakh better, and of course, all the ancillary material. This is oceans of it, but that help you develop wisdom. And of course, the other thing is experiencing, is learning from experience and trying to become wise from the experiences that we have. Certainly a lot of the negative experiences as well as the positive experiences. And in learning how to negotiate all of those things, we are able to actually enjoy this life and discover its beauty and not have attitudes such as "What have you done for me lately?" or attitudes that have entitlements, to try and rid ourselves of those kinds of things that, quite frankly, rob us of that joy, of that potential joy. And it seemed to me, I've just thought of this for quite a while now, that if I were to give you a guaranteed recipe for depression, it would be expectation, false expectations. And of course, it's very hard sometimes to examine ourselves and see what false expectations we have. And of course, they inevitably lead to anger and disappointment and things like that. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you for a little bit of hopefully a nugget. So let's keep going. So I did not get rid of the marking that I had there. So because we're not doing this long Rashi, I'm not going to do that. We did this, in fact, this particular Rashi we did. So I'm just going to delete that, and we're going to continue here. Vayhi miketz arba'im yom, and at the end of another 40 days, right? Vayiftach Noach et kalon hateva, asher asa. Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Now, we had read before, he was told to make a tzohar, which we interpreted according to various authorities. One authority said it was a window. Another one said that it was actually a precious jewel that shone. And you'd have to go back and for those particular verses and see what we commented on at that point. So here we go. Miketz arba'im yom, at the very end of 40 days. Mi shenru'u rashei harim. So the end of those 40 days from the point when the tops of the mountains became visible. Et chalon hateva asher asa, the window of the ark which he had made. So, latzohar. So he says, he made this window, and the way Rashi's reading this, it looks like for the tzohar, or for light. And this is Bereshit Rabbah, velo ze petach hateva. So the point is, this wasn't the opening of the ark. He was told to make that in its side, on the side of the ark, an opening. And so this was the tzohar that he made. Ha'asui leviyah b'tziah, because the opening was made for going in and coming out. And I'm not sure if I said that it wasn't the tzohar before, and that I have to attribute to my wonderful short-term memory, because when I prepared this, that was the impression that I had. So this was that tzohar. I have to be so careful about giving bad information. Vayishlach et ha'orev, and he sent out the raven, crow, something like that. Vayetze yatso vashov, and this raven just sort of went back and forth. Ad yevoshet hamayim, until the waters actually dried by al haaretz, from over the land, from above the land. So this you'll see. Yatzol v'shov. So Rashi explains this yatzol, going out, v'shov, and coming back. Holech, so in other words, this raven went, umakif svivot ateva, and it would fly around the edges of the ark. V'lo halach b'shlichuto, but he didn't go on his mission. The raven didn't go on its mission. And the next little piece is just really weird, okay? I have to tell you, it is really weird, so prepare yourselves. So, why? Shahaya choshdo, because the raven suspected him, al bat zugo, regarding his partner, that is to, and I'm going to discuss that in a second. But what I would have determined after researching this a little bit, that he was worried regarding his own raven was his own partner, the raven's partner. As we have learned, the Agadat Chelek, in an Agadah of Chelek, of the chapter called Chelek in Sanhedrin, in the tractate Sanhedrin. So here we go. This is why I put it in English. The raven suspected Noah would have relations with his wife, because the raven had relations with his wife while still on the ark. So we had learned that, of course, none of the animals, none of the creatures actually have relations, because the understanding is that the ultimate purpose of having these relations, intimate relations, is to procreate. That is, and of course, on the ark, procreation could have been disastrous. And yet we're told here that the raven apparently did this. Okay. I have to, before I go on with anything else, so you notice that I've got here, compare Siftei Chachamim. So Siftei Chachamim is a super commentary on Rashi. And according to Siftei Chachamim, it appears that he's saying that he was worried that Noah would have relations with his own wife, that is, with Noah's wife. And the reason is because he himself, that is the raven, had relations with his wife. And interestingly, and this is, of course, profound, and that is that one tends to suspect people of one's own sins. That's when, and I think if you think about reality that we live in, that is an incredible statement. And as I think I don't know that I've shared this proverb with you that I learned growing up in South Africa, but there's a proverb that says, the fox knows its own hole, and referring to the fact that the fox suspects other people of the very thing he's guilty of. And that's kind of what I believe is going on here. Now that's Siftei Chachamim, and I'd love to leave it at that. But Siftei Chachamim's interpretation is right on the money. But I did check the reference to Sanhedrin, and that does not appear to be accurate. It does appear to mean that he suspected Noah would have relations with his wife, which of course is ridiculous, of a human being having relations with a bird. Okay, I mean, it's crazy. So I have to think, if I'm going to make any sense of this whatsoever, that this is talking more, again, going back into literature and understanding that literary truth which goes into the very deepest recesses of who we are as human beings, often isn't stated in ways necessarily that we would talk about reality or scientifically or anything like that. And so it could be that, again, even with Siftei Chachamim's, it goes both ways. Of course, the way the Talmud states it makes less sense, but on the other hand, there is some message being given here, and I wouldn't say I've put my finger on it, that is being told to us about what's going on and in the world and the way the world operates and things like that. And I wish I could give you a more profound interpretation and explanation, but this is the best I can do under the circumstances. So let's go on with this. Unless you have any comments, and I don't blame you if you do, or concerns, but we'll have to leave it at that. The point is, and why did Noah pick the raven, etc.? That would be a legitimate literary question to ask, and to ask about what the raven represents, etc. In other words, looking for symbolism and things and metaphor and things like that.
Rabbi,
Yes, Harlan. Yes.
I was thinking that Noah was thinking about all those people dying from the flood, and he decided not to have relations with his wife or his sons, to have relations with their wives because of the people dying so much. He's a righteous man, and he felt all these people are dying,
right.
The good and the evil. I'm not going to have relations. This is not right.
You are right on the money, Harlan. That is one of the interpretations that is given when at the original point where we discussed the fact that Noah separated from his wife from an intimate point of view, and his sons as well. And we'll come back to it, because they will see that once they were able to get off the ark, and the point being made is that when the world is experiencing agony, when the world is in agony, that isn't the time when you seek that kind of pleasure. So the point, which is the point you're making, and you're totally right. And thank you for reminding me of that particular point. Yeah, thank you. So, Vayishalach et hayonah me'ito. So he then sent the dove from himself, right? He sent off the dove. They ought to see hakalu hamayim, whether the waters had ceased, where they were, in other words, that there weren't any waters that were flooding the earth anymore. That's basically what it's saying. Me'al pnei hadamah, from above, from the surface of the earth, right?
Did you do the second Rashi on the last verse?
Maybe I didn't. Oh, I didn't. Thank you. Wow. It's the old One Beatles song, I get by with a little help from my friends. Thank you so much. Thanks, Lauren. I'm glad you're able to rejoin us. So, Ad Yabeshet Hamayim. So this is part, I'm sorry?
I've been with you the whole time.
Oh, good. Thank you. So, yes. So he's saying that the raven just kept circling the ark. That's all it was doing until the waters dried up. Yabeshet, dried up. So pshuto kamashma'o. That's that's simply what it means. Its simple meaning is its implication. Aval midrash agadah. But according to the Agadah, according to the Agadic Midrash, Muchan haya ha'orev l'shlichut acher. Oh, this is lovely, actually. Okay, that the raven was actually ready for a different mission. Beautiful. And this is typical, right? This is the point that I make about how literary the approach is to this interpretation, to biblical interpretation, right? So, in other words, the fact that it mentions that the raven kept circling until the waters dried up, right, is the idea that that the mission that the raven had was one that took place after the waters had dried up. And what was that mission? So, in other words, the raven had that in mind, right? So this is something positive about the raven. Leshlichut acheret, for a different mission, but atzirat geshamim, when the rains were withheld. So the yabeshet hamayim, taken the waters were dried, is that the Midrash looks deeply into that phrase and understands it as meaning that the raven did its mission once there was a time when there was a drought, when the waters had ceased in a different kind of sense, right? Not the pshat meaning, this straightforward meaning, but a more symbolic or metaphoric, that there was a time when the waters were dried up, meaning there was a drought. And this takes place during the days of Elijah the prophet. As it says, and the references to the first book of Kings, chapter 17. What this means is that the ravens brought him bread and flesh, meat to eat. So what happened was that this is this wonderful story about Elijah running, basically, it appears, if my memory is serving me now, somewhere like to Mount Sinai. He took off. Remember, his life was in jeopardy because Jezebel, the queen at the time, King Ahab's queen, had basically killed off any prophets of God. Anyone who was claiming to believe in the God of Israel was killed. So Elijah, who was a prophet of Israel, took off, and I believe went to Mount Sinai and hid in a cave. And he didn't have any food. There was no source of food or water. And the ravens, it says, how the ravens brought him bread and meat. Okay? And it's in that passage.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm confused about the chronology. They're not saying Elijah happened right after the flood
Not
struck.
at all. Not at all.
As the raven brought food to Elijah, that was going to be its mission here.
Right. So what it's saying is, I think it's looking at ravens as a category of bird. So it wasn't necessarily the same raven, but we're talking about ravens as a class.
Right, I know. What I was talking about was the chronology,
Right.
because the way it's presented, it looks like, did the raven do this after, the flood, or and the waters dried up, or did he, do it in the time of Elijah? Those aren't the same time.
Right.
So yeah, so it's just different ravens, different
ravens, centuries later. Yes. Okay. And again, remember, always putting on that literary hat as to what's going on here, right? So foreshadowing, I guess, in a sense, right? That it's saying that the language of the Torah here is foreshadowing this event. So I just wanted to finish up a little bit about this is one of my favorite narratives in the Bible, because this is this place where God asks Elijah, regarding his own mission, etc. And Elijah basically is saying how he's trying to represent God, and no one's paying attention, and in fact he's in jeopardy of his life, etc. And there's that beautiful passage where there's this tremendous, I'm not going to remember the details well in terms of these things that happen. Like, for example, let's say there's this terrible hurricane or whatever, or tornado, whirlwind, or something like that. And the passage in chapter 17 says, God was not in the whirlwind. And then it talks about something else, like a fire or something powerful and destructive. And it says, God wasn't in that. And then it says after that, a still small voice. Wow. I mean, truly, it moves me to think about that it's the still small voice where God is to be found. And I think as we're talking about it right now, that perhaps that still more small voice means that place inside each and every one of ourselves, where we're calmed down, we're not overly emotional, and we're thinking deeply in terms of our own behavior and how we're relating to other people and listening to that voice. So it is absolutely one of my favorite narratives in the Bible. And if you have a chance to check out chapter 17, of the first book of Kings. Please give it a shot. I think you'll enjoy it too. So Lauren, thank you for reminding me that I had not done the second part of this Rashi, right? Okay. Okay. So we're on to 8. So we mentioned that Noah at this point sends out the dove, This is all these powerful stories. Vayishalach et hayonah, right? He's sent out, let's make sure I've got Vayishalach. And I believe this is a PL form of the verb. So at any rate, he sent forth the dove, the sof sheva yamim. That was, so he waited another 7 days after he had sent out the raven. Shahare kativ, because it says, how do we know it? He waited a week and then did this. Vayichal od sheva yamim acherim. Because in the next, he sends out the dove a second time, right? The first time that we'll see in the text itself that the dove returns, and we'll read why the dove returns. And then it says he waited another 7 days. And because in the second case, it said he waited another 7 days, well, you can't do another without having done one. So because it says he waited another 7 days, acherim, from this statement, right? Atalamed, you learn, you can infer from this, right? She'af parishona hochil sheva yamim, that he also waited 7 days the first time around. Vayishalach. So he says, this is interesting. Rashi, I told you, it's not vayishlach, it's vayishalach. And the difference in the Hebrew, Rashi is going to explain to us. He says, Ein ze lashon shlichut. This isn't that he sent the dove in this way, that he sort of cast her out to sea. Ela lashon shiluach. So we have this sense of, there's a phrase, shiluach hakein, it's a mitzvah, where you have to, if you come across a mother bird laying on her eggs or on fledglings, you can take the eggs, but you have to send the mother away. And that's called shiluach. In other words, releasing. So Vayishalach could mean he released, instead of he sent, but he released the dove. Shalcha lalechet ledarcha. In other words, he released her to go her own way. Uvezo yireh. So and just simply by releasing her, he would see if the waters had ended. She'im timsa manoach, because he understood that if she in fact found some place to rest, lo tashub elav, she would not come back to him. Look at this, what we've sort of gotten out of through Rashi, what we've gleaned from Rashi's understanding.
But would she leave? Would she not come back without her mate?
She wasn't. That's a good question, and right now, it's simply not considering that. It's just, again, that's a scientific question, and that's not the point here. Okay, she might come back for her mate, she might not. The story is telling us that she wouldn't come back, and whether or not her mate was present is simply not part of the story. It's just, yeah, go on.
She doesn't address this question, but I was just wondering from a literary standpoint whether the word that means rest, menuach, and in this form noach,
Yeah.
connection, with his name, and if the connection's important or coincidental.
Yes, I haven't read it. I haven't read any connection being drawn there. I know that when Noah is named back at the end of the chapter, I think it would have been the first parsha of Bereshit, where it talks about his father naming him, and the story is, and he's named to say that that this one will give us relief. So the term Noach in some ways can mean relief from the fact that the earth was cursed, and there's a midrash on that. What was the relief that Noah gave to humankind after the earth had been cursed is that Noah invented the plow. And before that, people didn't plow their land. I guess what they would do is maybe throw a stick in and put in a seed, or they would just leave the seed lying on the field. But Noah invented the plow, which is such a great, level of appreciation for the fact that these instruments are created to help us. And it raises other questions as, was it okay for Noah to invent something that in some ways was going to countermand the original curse that God had given? And whether it's okay for human beings to do that. And of course, the implication of this midrash is that God really does, because Kilolam Chastor, because God's kindness endures forever, that who gave Noah that ability would have been God. God would have given Noah the intelligence to make the plow. And since the plow was really for the benefit of humankind, he wasn't using his intelligence to hurt mankind. He was using his intelligence that God had given him to invent the plow. So even though it countermanded that initial curse, it nevertheless was something that God would have approved of, clearly, right? As the rest of the story suggests. And again, you look at the way in which, we're analyzing things. Yes, Golda.
I missed the very beginning. And is the raven also female?
No, the raven in this case is male.
Interesting.
Isn't it? I know. And by
Rabbi,
the, yes.
the raven was sent out by Noah to find. The raven is carnivorous. The raven, if raven brought back some meat in his beak.
No, careful. No. Hold it, Harlan. That happened centuries later unless you're making a different point, right? The raven brought meat to Elijah, didn't bring any meat to Noah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, careful. You have to be careful. Yeah.
There's also a tradition that Noah invented wine.
No, yeah, but that's later on.
Yeah, I don't know, Lauren, that he necessarily invented the wine.
I don't know if he necessarily invented the plow. I've read both of them in various places.
You did read that Noah invented wine?
No.
In certain sources, yes.
Okay. The Torah is explicit that Noah made wine, that he planted a vineyard and made wine. That's the Torah is explicit about. Whether he invented that process, I
They're religious sources, they're not historical sources, obviously.
No, of course, and I'm not questioning that. I'm only questioning it because I've never come across that. I come across the fact that Noah invented the plow, and it doesn't say that explicitly, of course. The Torah does not explicitly say that, right?
Yeah.
And what the Torah does say explicitly isn't that he necessarily invented the wine. Because remember, Noah was 10 generations following Adam, okay? And so there's a possibility. But let me tell you, I will retract for sure if I come across, or if you want to give me that reference.
Thanks. I'm not vouching for the plow or the wine. I'm just so what happened was I looked up Noah inventing the plow, and as soon as I put Noah invented wine came up, so I clicked.
Really?
There were some sources, so
right. So again, you understand that from my perspective, an authoritative source would be the Talmud, the Midrash. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. I would not consider some modern interpretation to be authoritative, as far as that's concerned. As far as that's, okay. Let's see how we're doing on time. All right. I think we need to. Do we have anything? No. I think we are. Yes. I think we did. Right. We ended this. So we'll start next on the next verse, and that's verse 10. Oh no, we've got verse 9. So let's just do verse 9, and then we'll start with verse 10, God willing, tomorrow. V'lo matzah hayonah manoach lachaf radla. And the dove did not find a rest, right, someplace for her foot, right, for her claw, but it literally means for the sole of her foot, something like that. Vatashov elav el hateva, and she returned to him, to the ark. By the way, the fact that he released her in a way, does that imply, I'm just playing around a little bit, that she trusted him, but not necessarily. I mean, she simply couldn't find a place to keep flying. She couldn't do that. Because there was still water over the entire surface of the earth. And he sent forth his hand and he took her. It's a beautiful image, I think. And he brought her to him, into the ark. So that's where we are right now. And we'll mark this for tomorrow. See, I double check if there is anything on 9, and there isn't. So we'll start, God willing, as I said, with verse 10 tomorrow. I'm going to stop the share. And I don't know if there's anyone who wants to comment on the record. Otherwise, I will. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
do.
Yeah.
I was going to say that the dove was sent out by Noah, and then later on he came back. The first time he didn't come back for a while, and then he came back, and then Noah said, "Well, I'm going to send him out again." After about 7 more days, and he sent him out again, and he came back with an olive branch in his mouth. And Noah said, "Oh,
Harlan, spoiler alert."
Spoilers. Spoilers. We're going to do that tomorrow.
yeah, please."
We'll just sit then. Okay. Thank you. All right, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording. Take care.